Welcome to the twisted realm of the world's deadliest dictators, where power-hungry tyrants have unleashed unimaginable horrors upon their people. These 10 men, we might say, have left an indelible mark on history. And so join us as we delve into the dark hearts of the most brutal leaders the world has ever known and uncover the shocking stories of their reigns of terror. This is Past and Places. At number 10 on our list is Idi Amin, Uganda's ruthless dictator. Deep in the heart of Eastern Africa was a country known for its beauty and diversity until the rise of Amin to power, a man that brought darkness upon its people, with his name synonymous with terror till this very day.
Ran to France and asked the financial and assistant in France.
You are sure that in 1967 they captured the whole Sinai. They captured part of the Jordan. They captured most of the part of the Golan Heights. The resolution was passed here that peacefully Israel must obey that order to withdraw from all Arab territory.
Amin was born in 1925, a smooth-talking and ambitious man rising through the ranks of the British colonial army. He possessed a ruthless drive to power behind his charming demeanor and strong presence. In 1971, Amin captured Uganda with much ease in a coup that overthrew President Milton Obote. He promised stability and prosperity, but truly held sinister motives. Amin's regime was one of brutal suppression, torture, and murder. He expelled Uganda's Asian population, seized their businesses, and nationalized the economy. He terrorized his opponents with his secret police, the Public Safety Unit. He declared himself King of Scotland, conqueror of the British Empire, and went as far as pronouncing himself the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. A coalition of Ugandan exiles and Tanzanian forces overthrew him in 1979. He fled into exile in Saudi Arabia and lived there until he died in 2003. Number 9. Saddam Hussein, the ruthless ruler of Iraq. In the sun-scorched deserts of Mesopotamia, Saddam Hussein first dawned with a rise to the zenith by iron-fisted dominance of Iraq through cruel, brutal force and an ambition that knew no cessation.
وبالتسلسل التاريخي فلا تحسموا معركة وسائل الإطلاق عن بعد.
Saddam was born into a poor, cultivating family, but his fate lay far from the fields. He joined the Ba'ath Party and clambered to the top with cunning and ruthlessness. By 1979, Saddam took over Iraq, finalizing the elimination of any and all contenders, thus entrenching power into his hands. He promised prosperity and security, but delivered only terror and war. Saddam's regime was filled with genocidal campaigns against the Kurds and Shia Muslims, invasions of Iran and Kuwait, chemical warfare, and human rights abuses. His time in power was also bizarrely eccentric, with tales of extravagant palaces and opulent lifestyle, rumors of secret underground tunnels and bunkers. In 2003, coalition forces overthrew Saddam's regime, and he was captured, tried, and executed for his crimes. Number 8. To most, Vladimir Lenin will always be the tribune of the common worker, the creator of the Soviet Union. But behind the great facade of revolutionary heroism lies a far murkier reality. Born in 1870, he rose to be the unchallengeable leader of the Bolshevik Party. Promising a utopian order, he imposed a system that featured a one-party dictatorship. Under his leadership, Lenin made opposition parties illegal. Political opponents were arrested, executed, or exiled wherever they were found. He also endorsed the Red Terror campaign, one of violence and intimidation against the enemies of the revolution. Thousands perished for the sake of the revolution. Lenin set up a system of forced labor camps, called the gulags, where political dissidents and prisoners were worked to death. There were also restrictions on the freedom of speech, assembly, and the press. Hence, individual rights were trampled under the threat of revolutionary necessity. Lenin's ruthless actions shaped the Soviet Union into a totalitarian regime that lasted for decades. Number 7. The brutal regime of Pol Pot. In the 1970s, Cambodia was taken over by a communist regime. A man, Pol Pot, was leading this communist government. Pot had a dream of an agrarian society that could sustain itself, but this later degenerated into one of the darkest chapters in the history books. Pot was a charismatic leader, promising the path to a utopia, but his regime, the Khmer Rouge, would in the end be involved with the killing of at least 1.7 to 2.2 million people out of a population of 8 million. Once in power, Pol Pot forced urban populations into rural labor camps, whereby they had to pass through the most inhumane conditions of existence, hunger, and executions. In essence, he set out to abolish from society the educated people, the middle class, and whoever else he saw to be a threat to himself. People were forced to work tirelessly in the fields with very limited food supplies and rest. Those who were not able to cope with the harsh conditions were executed. The infamous S-21 prison is emblematic of the brutality of the regime. Thousands were tortured, they were beaten, flogged, and electrocuted into confessing to crimes they did not commit before they were eventually executed. Its commander, Comrade Dutch, was an equally cruel person. Ethnic minorities, amongst them the Vietnamese, Chinese, and Muslims, have also been victims of the anti-social regimen of Pol Pot. The Khmer Rouge aimed to achieve a homogeneous society, leaving no choice other than genocide to reach ultimate assimilation. Villages were flattened and people had only two choices, either to leave or to die. The brutality of the regime was unparalleled. People were killed for speaking a foreign language, wearing glasses, or simply for being educated. The dread Khmer Rouge slogan, "To keep you is no benefit, to destroy you is no loss," became true orderliness. 1979 was the year the Vietnamese army invaded Cambodia and overthrew the Khmer Rouge regime. Pot died in 1998 under house arrest, never having to stand trial for the supposed crimes he had committed. His case teaches the associated dangers of extremism and why human rights need to be secured at all costs. 6. The Supreme Leader, Kim Il-sung, the founding father of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, exercised absolute rule over North Korea with a grip of steel from 1948 until his death in 1994. His was the era of fierce suppression, propaganda, and a cult of personality that has lasted for generations. Kim Il started his path to power during the Korean War, where he distinguished himself as one of the personalities in the government of North Korea. After the war, he consolidated power by throwing away all forms of opposition and forming a totalitarian regime. Kim Il-sung turned North Korea into a country of concentration camps. People had no right to voice disagreement, and they all lived in fear of falling under the secret police's suspicion. Their whole life, from employment to studying at schools and marriage, was controlled by the regime. People were obliged to idolize Kim Il-sung as a supreme leader, worshipping him however they went. Everywhere you could follow an image of him. His regime showed its brutality in the treatment of political prisoners with forced labor, torture, and starvation. The infamous Yodak concentration camp was a symbol of the cruel character of the regime. His wholesale economic policy had caused a kind of all-pervasive pauperization and famine, with millions falling victim to starvation, as well as diseases resulting from it. The orientation of the regime towards militarization and its nuclear ambition has cost the economy huge sums of resources, while the people continue to be distressed. As brutal as he was, Kim Il-sung's years of propaganda made him out to be some people's person, and today his legacy is still being carried on by his son and grandson, who manage North Korea's affairs with the same no-nonsense grip. If you're enjoying this video, please give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment in the comments section. 5. Adolf Hitler, the Führer's reign of terror. The Führer of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, put loose on the face of the earth a reign of terror that blemished blood mixed with many more treacheries, devastation, death, and destruction.
Meine Zeit verwendet habe im Dienste meines Volkes. Gib du jetzt deine Stimme ab, wenn ja!
Hitler's philosophy of racial dominance along with militarism resulted in the extermination of about 6 million Jews and millions of others deemed as the unwanted ones. Hitler came to power in 1933, responding to the situation after World War I, by capturing the opportunity that arose amidst economic and political chaos in Germany. He promised to fulfill the old greatness of Germany, but his real intentions were sinister. His appointment as chancellor started his move to abolish democracy, civil rights, and set up a totalitarian regime. The sins of the Nazi regime are legion. The Nuremberg laws deprived Jews of their citizenship, and the Kristallnacht pogrom signified the start of persecution with violence. Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Dachau, concentration camps in general, have stood for cruel treatment, forced labor, and mass murder. Hitler's aggressive militarism provoked the Second World War with the invasion of Poland.
Reich, welded into a mighty war machine.
The war ended with huge destruction, resulting in millions dead, injured, or displaced. German atrocities extended to the slaughtering of Soviet prisoners, the slaughter of loving Romani people, and the ruthless suppression of resistance movements. 4. The Butcher of the Congo, King Leopold II. King Leopold II of Belgium, known to be a monarch with a reputation for benevolence. His reign was marked by the brutal exploitation and genocide of the Congo Free State, a region he controlled personally. Leopold's interest in the Congo was driven by greed to extract its vast natural resources, including rubber, ivory, and diamonds. He created a private army, the Force Publique, which terrorized local populations, forcing them into forced labor and massacring those who resisted. Under Leopold, the atrocities amounted to millions dead from forced labor, starvation, and disease. The Force Publique cut off hands and feet for punishment, along with burning homes to the ground. In his reign, Leopold halved the Congolese population from 20 million to 10 million. The rule of Leopold was shrouded in secrecy, but finally word of the excesses and horrors trickled out to the outside world. Public outcry led to the annexation of the Congo by the Belgian government, ending Leopold's rule. 3. Joseph Stalin. He was the ruler of the Soviet Union from 1922 up to 1953. By any measure, he was an iron-fisted ruler, and his legacy was one of terror, repression, and death. Stalin's rise to power began after Vladimir Lenin's death, when he manipulated and eliminated opponents to become the Soviet Union's supreme leader. He implemented a series of 5-year plans aimed at rapid industrialization, but at a terrible human cost. The brutality of this regime was pitiful in the forced collectivization of agriculture, leading to widespread famine, which in that matter in particular in Ukraine killed millions. Millions were arrested, tortured, and either executed or sent to labor camps in Stalin's purges. The most famous is the Great Purge. The Gulag system was a network of forced labor camps, and it became synonymous with Stalin's brutality. Prisoners faced inhumane conditions, forced labor, and starvation. Millions died in the Gulag, with estimates suggesting up to 20 million victims. His paranoid style continued in his attempt to purge perceived enemies, including intellectuals, artists, and military leaders. His cult of personality reached absurd levels, with Stalin portrayed as an infallible leader. 2. Jenis Khan. Jenis was an industrious ruler in the Mongol Empire who was known for his records of subjugation, destruction, and ruination. His desire for expansion, which he started early during the 13th century, created history's largest empire at that time, but at a terrible human cost. Khan's rise to power began in Mongolia, where he unified the warlike tribes and began a drive toward expansion. His military tactics, including the use of cavalry, archers, and spies, allowed him to conquer vast territories. The Mongol Empire expanded and is known for destruction, killing, and even enslavement. The Mongol armies had the cities razed to the ground, massacred the population, and shattered the very essence of entire cultures. They left a trail of destruction from Eastern Europe to China. The Mongols used terror as a tool of conquest, leaving behind widespread destruction. However, despite his brutal methods, Khan is remembered as a brilliant military strategist and leader who united warring tribes and created a vast empire. Finally, at number 1 is the great helmsman of terror, Mao Zedong. The founding father of the People's Republic of China ruled with an iron fist from 1949 until he died in 1976. His regime was marked by widespread repression, famine, and violence, resulting in tens of millions of deaths. Mao's ascent to power began during the Chinese Civil War, where he led the Communist Party to victory. His was the promise of utopia, but his intentions were far from noble. Mao's policies of land reform and collectivization resulted in the deaths of millions of peasants and intellectuals. During the Great Leap Forward, Mao wanted rapid industrialization of China, which was accompanied by one of the most disastrous man-made famines in the history of mankind, with estimates reportedly as much as 20 to 45 million deaths. Mao's government responded to this crisis by deporting the peasants to labor camps. Mao's Cultural Revolution, which aimed to eliminate all elements of tradition and culture in China, only resulted in bloodbath horror and chaos. Uptight red youth radicals subjected terror to cities, almost killing thousands and destroying cultural artifacts. Persecution of intellectuals, artists, and perceived enemies was on the list. His personality cult was lifted to ridiculous dimensions of Mao as the great helmsman standing infallible. Mao's legacy is absolute brutality, evoking the perils of power unchecked and the suppression of individual rights. Thanks for watching. If you like this documentary, please subscribe for more excellent documentaries and share your thoughts in your comments below.